justice. Being a dean, you always appreciate practical skills within the faculty, and I think Dean Justice is still looking for them. My name, the Center for Political Thought and Leadership is new here at Arizona State University. Actually, we've only been up and running about 7 months, and we've had a series of events over the last year that are quite exciting, and we have a whole venue for next year. The purpose of the Center for Political Thought and Leadership is to train a new generation of leaders for our state and the nation who understand the foundations of democracy, the rule of law, constitutional government, and they're actively engaged in our classes through the program of political thought and leadership in debating fundamental issues which we face as a state and a nation and a world. We're also co-sponsoring the event is the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies, and I want to thank the director, Robert Bjork, for joining us and hosting this event. Before introducing our speaker tonight, I do want to thank you, the audience, for turning out. I see many distinguished people. I see many future leaders of our state and nation. So thank you very much for turning out. I also want to thank those who helped fund the event, the Charles Koch Foundation, the Institute for Humane Studies, and one of our major donors to the center, and that's a local businessman, Jim Chamberlain. Jim's extremely modest, but a great contributor. Our advisory board is headed by the honorary chairman, Senator John Kyle, who can't be with us here tonight, but also our active chair people, Yvonne Cahill and Susan K. Schultz. And other members of the advisory board are here, and if they would please stand, we really want to thank them. Behind every successful event, which I think this is going to be, is really a supportive staff. And they really make the events work. And I think this event is a recognition of their good work, communications, and just organizing the event. And I want to personally thank them in a very heartfelt way to the manager of the Center for Political Thought and Leadership and our other staff member, her name's Roxanne Barwick, and able staff member Natalie Estrada, and then the staff person from the Center for Medieval Studies, Kendra Turbeck, I think I pronounced Kerbeck, I'm sorry. Would you please stand? And let's let me know. And finally, let me thank the undergraduate fellows for the to the Center for Political Thought and Leadership. We have 4 fellows this year who actively work at the center and do a lot of the things that we need. So will the fellows, for the undergraduate fellows, please stand. I won't mention your names when you're here. Thank you, Richard. And finally, I think we should thank Tom Shippey and his wife, Catherine Shippey, who flew all the way here from Dorchester, England, which is in the south of the island. It's Tory country, and I think David Cameron is going to need every single vote from that county. The Shippeys arrived last week, so they could go up and see our Grand Canyon, one of the great sights of the world, enjoy our great weather and spectacular scenery, and the energy of our great state of Arizona. I grew up here, so I'm a big Arizona supporter. Tom Shippey has taught at many universities, including Oxford University, in England, and Harvard University, which I think is in America. And he has published widely in medieval studies. He is well known for his book on Tolkien and Tolkien's predecessor, Jacob Grimm, and he continues to keep up with present and future studies in science fiction, which he keeps up with as a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, which he writes on science fiction and fantasy. Professor Shippey will speak for about 40-45 minutes. That will be followed by Q&A. We have, at that point, we have mics, so raise your hand and we'll let you, not let you, but we invite you to ask questions. So, Professor Shippey, thank you very much for coming to our beautiful state and our wonderful University of Arizona State.
I'll begin by saying that over the last 18 months, I've had an opportunity which arises too rarely for professors in the humanities. And that's an opportunity to lift my nose out of detail and take a long view. What happened is that I was asked by the teaching company, I expect you've seen their adverts, to prepare a course of 24 lectures on heroes and legends, running chronologically from Homer, nearly 3,000 years ago, right up to the present. In fact, I bracketed the course by starting with Tolkien and ending up with Harry Potter. But in between, I went all the way from Odysseus through Gum Quixote and Jane Austen's Elizabeth Bennet and Huckleberry Finn and Sally from The Color Purple and all sorts like that. Well, as I did this, I couldn't help comparing things. It was inevitable in the way it was set up. And one thing that struck me forcibly is that a major motif in the later 20th and 21st centuries is fear of the state. And I should just explain at this point that when I say state, I don't mean state as in Arizona or Massachusetts. I mean state as in national government and the institutions of national government. The most obvious example of fear of the state is, in literature, is George Orwell's 1984. I called my lecture on Winston Smith the hero none of us want to be. However, the same theme was evident even in Harry Potter. What struck me about this was that Harry Potter was a whistleblower hero who had to fight on two fronts. On the one hand, he had to combat the efforts of the Dark Lord. I mean, in fantasy these days, you pretty much have to have a Dark Lord. That's inbuilt in everything. But on the other hand, he had to combat the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic is the institution of the magical state he lives in, whose duty it ought to be to combat the Dark Lord. But the Ministry has determined that there no longer is a Dark Lord. He is not coming back, he is not to be talked about, and he is not to be named. And Harry's insistence on saying he is saying the opposite of that, well, you know, it's traitorous. Actually, it's worse than traitorous. You know what it is? It's career-threatening. So, as a result, the Ministry's main aim is to silence Harry by bribe or by threat. And a third, and in those ways, quite different hero that I picked out for my series, only she's not a hero, she's a heroine, is the girl with the dragon tattoo. She is the heroine of Steve Larsen's trilogy of Scandinavian crime novels, which incidentally have been made into a very successful set of movies. I've got to tell you they're in Swedish, which is difficult for everyone except Professor Bjork over there, who is bilingual in Swedish, but the rest of us can manage with the English subtitles, okay? But they stick very close to their original, and I can strongly recommend all three of them. Anyway, the thing about the girl with the dragon tattoo is that she is a kind of hacker heroine. She's a whiz with computers. She earns a good living as a security advisor to commercial firms, but it doesn't do her much good, because she was declared in childhood to be a ward of the Swedish state. And although she is now adult and well able to earn her own living, she remains entirely under the control of her state-appointed guardian. She cannot even buy herself a new computer from her own earnings without his authority. Yeah, but the trouble is that her guardian is in fact a sexual predator. I won't say what he does to her, and I won't say what she does to him, for they're both pretty gruesome. They're very gruesome. But the point I'm making is that in this situation, she has no effective legal resource. Her complaints would be ignored, her guardian's explanations would be accepted, because she is a ward of the state, and he is an official of the state. Well, this is just fiction, but none of it is very far removed from fact. We know very well what real-life events created Orwell's vision of 1984. And I just add that experience of whistleblowing is also pretty discouraging. There have been some sad cases recently in the National Health Service. But the striking parallel, which has become increasingly scandalous right now, and which takes us right back to the girl with the dragon tattoo, are the cases of child sex abuse of children in care of local authorities. This has been exposed in one British city after another, and I won't try to detail the whole history of it. One of the worst cases to be exposed was in the city of Rotherham, a metropolitan borough council whose motto is, where everyone matters. Well, this slide is from a report made by Professor Alexis J. When these things come up, I won't read them out to you, they're so you can read them, but you notice the conservative estimate of 1,400 children. This report came out last year. It was an extremely damning report. I just picked one bit out of it. And the council responded to this damning report by doing absolutely nothing. So they had a further inquiry, this time by Professor Louise Casey. And once again, I offer a couple of tips from it. Well, again, I won't read it all out, but perhaps I'll draw attention to the second paragraph. All the concerns related to young people, a high proportion of whom were looked after. Well, again, you have to put the square quotes in because they weren't being looked after. That took us on a little bit further, but perhaps one of the most damning bits, and this goes back to, I'll stick with my point about high proportion of them. One thing I've never been able to quite work out is how high the proportion was of abused children who were in the care of the social services of the state. There was a report coming from Greater Manchester which suggested it was about 50%. But that report has been criticised for its unusual shyness. It was written by an MP from the Labour or the Socialist Party, and before she was an MP, she was, as it happens, a council social worker. So her report had some strange lacunae in it. But here's one more snippet which makes my point about helplessness in the face of official authority. This is actually from the J report. Well, I'll give you a moment to just read that and digest it. So what that suggests is if you try to protect your child in care from rape and forced prostitution, you will be arrested. because authority over them is now vested in the officials of the state, and just as in Harry Potter, the officials of the state have a vested interest in denial, as these reports repeatedly confirm. Well, I think we had enough of that, actually. Perhaps you can see my first point, though I could make it many times over. These negative images of fear of the state, which have grown increasingly more common, are fiction, but they are not far removed from fact. There is a reason why they have come to dominate fictional representations. Well, my next point is a comparative one. Another thing I naturally did in my course of 24 lectures was to look at influential characters from the century before, from the 19th century. There was a whole string of inventions by a group of authors whom some of us now call the New Romancers. And if you want to know who the New Romancers were, if you ever saw the movie The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, they were the authors who created the characters who are the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. There were people like Rider Haggard, who gave us Alan Quatermain, or Conan Doyle, who gave us Sherlock Holmes, or Bram Stoker, who gave us Dracula, and a whole string of others. Well, compare that with what I've been talking about. How does the state affect the life of Sherlock Holmes in Victorian England? The answer, of course, is very little indeed. Sherlock, of course, has a competitive relationship with the police force, which is part of his story. But once he's caught the criminals who have baffled the police, he just hands them over to the domestic legal system, in which he has complete confidence. Incidentally, I just point out, this is an aside, if you forgive me, every now and then Sherlock says to Dr. Watson, "I say, Watson, have you still got your own service revolver?" And Watson says, "Yes." And Sherlock says, "Well, bring it with you." And Dr. Watson, of course, takes it with him. Of course, Dr. Watson knows that if he shoots somebody, he will be tried by a jury of his peers, and if they decide he shouldn't have shot somebody, then he will be hanged by the neck until he is dead. But it doesn't worry him, because he knows, and Sherlock knows, that he will go on a trial of his peers, and they will listen to his explanation and say, "Oh, well done, old chap, you did exactly the right thing." So, Sherlock, shall we say, is not concerned about the organs of the state. Also, in the Sherlock Holmes stories, the soldiers and sailors turn up quite frequently, and are always viewed favourably. So, as far as we can see, in the England of Sherlock Holmes, the state runs the domestic legal system, it defends the trade routes and the imperial possessions, and it's also, and this is very important, Sherlock really relies on it, it delivers the mail. And it delivers the mail a great deal more efficiently than the Royal Mail can manage now. Sherlock assumes that there will be more than one delivery of mail a day, which I can assure you is no longer the case. Well, by modern standards, this is pretty close to minimum government. Well, I turn now to my advertised topic, which is Professor Tolkien and his great invention of the mythical race of hobbits. The hobbits live in Middle-earth, in a particular enclave of it, inhabited solely by hobbits, which they call the Shire. The major point about hobbits is that within Middle-earth, they are an anachronism. Most of Middle-earth is in a situation which we might describe historically as post-Roman Empire. There's a reduced empire in the south, which is Gondor. There are also barbarian tribes, some of them federated with the empire, like the Riders of Rohan, and some of them not. And there are all people riding horses, wearing chainmail, fighting with swords and spears. This is a kind of 6th century situation. But the hobbits aren't like that at all. They appear to be scaled-down English people of about the 1890s. Tolkien was born in 1892. The major distinction from everyone else in Middle-earth, barbarians, old empire, whatever, is that the hobbits smoke. Tolkien was a professional philologist. He was very aware of the origin of words. In fact, I would say he was more aware of the origin of words than anyone else on the planet. And so a word he never used was tobacco, because he knew perfectly well that this was an import from the New World, like potato and tomato, words which he also erased from his text. Just the same, hobbits don't smoke tobacco, but they smoke pipe weed, which we might have called tobacco if we hadn't borrowed the word tobacco. And one of them, at one point, Sam Gamgee, offers to cook fish and chips. Chips being, of course, French fries, as we call them, made from potatoes. Well, if you look at this slide, you'll see what I mean. Let's see if I can get them back. This is going to be interesting. Right, there we are. That's the hall at Bag End. And actually, you'll see that it's not hard to read. What it says now is the hall at Bag End, residence of B. Baggins, Esquire. This is a picture drawn by Tolkien. And you can see that B. Baggins, Esquire is smoking a pipe. Okay? But look at what he's got on the wall. What's that there? That's a clock. There's the other. What's that there? That's a barometer. Now, I thought at this point I was going to be able to tell you exactly when clocks of this kind and barometers of this kind were introduced into the world, but actually it turned out to be harder than I thought. But I think we can say that these things did not become items of domestic furniture until the mid or late 19th century. So as far as this goes, hobbits look as if they are about the same date as Sherlock Holmes. Okay, what is the form of social organisation within the Shire? In the prologue to The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien wrote a section of the ordering of the Shire. This tells us that the Shire covered about 15,000 square miles, which I would say is about 3 English counties. It was divided into 4 quarters, which he called farthings. This is a kind of philological joke. Yorkshire is still divided into ridings, which are the word riding being derived from Old Norse Thrythjung. So Thrythjunga was the 3rd English, you might say, of Yorkshire. But a farthing in Tolkien's youth was also the smallest English coin, a quarter of a penny. So the joke was that they weren't ridings or thirdings, they were farthings. Anyway, it's divided into 4 quarters. French word, or whatever you would say in English, or we would say in English, farthings. Well, at this time, he says, the hobbits had hardly any, and he puts the quotes around it, government. They had hardly any government at all. Far back in history, they had acknowledged the authority of a human king, but after the downfall of that kingdom, they ruled themselves. They chose from their own chiefs a thane to hold the authority of the king that was gone. Thane is another old word, we perhaps remember it from Macbeth. Remember, he became Thane of Cawdor, and it means servant, king's servant. Well, what does the Thane do? Here we go, I'm clicking, but it's not coming up. Help! Somebody is going to rescue us. I'll just carry on and tell you what you will see when we find out where the slide finally goes. Actually, Devon is about to take control of this. There we are. Good. Thanks, Devon. Better stay there. You can see what it says. Thane is the master of the Shire Moot, the captain of the Shire muster, and the hobbitry in arms, but it's just a nominal dignity. The only real official of the Shire is the mayor of Mitchell Delving. Mitchell Delving is basically Old English. Mitchell means big and Delving means digging, big diggings. The mayor runs the offices of postmaster and first sheriff. We can figure out also that the Shire's legal system centres on the Shire Moot, and they have a kind of prison which they call the lockholes. And they have a tiny police force which is called the sheriffs. You might say sheriffs, but Tolkien was a philologist who knew about the etymology of words, and he knew that sheriff was wrong. It should have been sheriff, so he wrote it as sheriff. There are then sheriffs, which are the police force, but there's only 12, 3 for each father. The Shire, then you could say, is an image of rustic harmony with minimal government. Such government as it has, just like Sherlock Holmes' time, keeps the peace, that's the Shire Moot, defends the frontiers, that's the Shire muster, and most important, delivers the mail. The first time we see Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit, he's standing outside his front door reading his Morning Post. Notice, Morning Post. That implies that there is also an Afternoon Post. So just like Sherlock Holmes, he trusts the messenger service to deliver twice a day. In all this, it resembles another English fantasy written at exactly the same time as Tolkien, T.H. White's The Sword in the Stone, which of course became a Disney film. This is set in the Forest Sauvage, which is at once a forest, a village in the forest, and the castle which dominates the village. But it doesn't dominate it much, because White shows again and again images of active cooperation by all social classes. The aristocrats from the castle join in the haymaking, which is a village function. At Christmas, all inhabitants of the village come into the castle for Christmas dinner, at which everyone is encouraged to sing songs. And the day after Christmas, everyone, including Robin Hood, who is turned up from the forest, goes on a communal boar hunt, led by a huntsman sent down by the king. Now, a point which could be made, and often has been made, often very angrily, is that this is just silly old English nostalgia for a time and a social setting which never existed, just wasn't like that at all. But my point, which corresponds exactly to the one I made just now, about fear of the state being fact as well as fiction, is that these images of social harmony are perfectly recognizable. At least they are to me. I wanted at this point to show you a photo of my Uncle Jack, but I just haven't been able to find it in the family archives. But I remember it well, because it showed Uncle Jack wearing what you might well call the full Monty. He had a white suit and a sword, and one of those funny hats that ambassadors wear, with a plume in it. So there's glory for you. Now, why did I want to show you this? Was I building up to telling you that my Uncle Jack was a Viscount or something? Not at all. He was a plumber. He was a successful plumber who ran his own business, but that is not why he was wearing the full Monty. He was wearing it because he'd been appointed Deputy Lord Lieutenant of the County of Durham. And this is not because he was a successful plumber. I think it was because at the outbreak of World War II, he joined the Royal Artillery at the lowest rank, which is gunner. And he came out at the end of the war as Lieutenant Colonel commanding a regiment of field artillery. What are the duties of a Lord Lieutenant? Well, these days, his or her main duty is to offer hospitality to the Queen if she decides to visit the county. Well, Uncle Jack had a very nice house, but there was no way you could fit the Queen and her entourage into it. So the Lord Lieutenant had to be someone who had a stately home, which Uncle Jack didn't. And that's why he was only a deputy. But the other ancient duty of the Lord Lieutenant was to lead the county militia. So he was very like the Hobbit's Thane. He held the authority of the absent king, and if necessary, he led the Shire muster, or the Hobbitry in arms, you might say. And I'm sure that if the French had invaded the county of Durham, though in fact it would be much more likely to be the Scotch, actually, but whether it was the French or the Scotch, you couldn't ask a better person to lead the county militia than my Uncle Jack. And I would have been right behind him, clutching my old Webley 455, since forfeited like all other handguns in Britain on the orders of Prime Minister Blair, except for the illegal ones, of course, of which there are now more than ever, all owned by criminals. So that was a successful piece of legislation, wasn't it? Well, going back to the picture given by T.H. White, I live in a village. I don't turn out for the haymaking, but I do turn out for communal labour to cut back the hedges around the village allotment, which is a kind of vegetable field which we share, and which was donated to us by the previous squire, Sir William. I ate my Christmas dinner in the village hall along with my neighbours, who were indeed encouraged to sing songs or tell stories, though we let Thora off because she's over 100, so she didn't have to. And as for that, the day after Christmas, I went to the Boxing Day beat, not of boarhounds, though we do have wild boar coming back, so there's a chance yet. No, it was foxhound. I don't know anything about fox hunting, but I know that Brigadier Rupert, 10th Hussars, gives everyone who turned up one of the largest glasses of port I've ever seen. And I was a fellow at Oxford College, you know. And I add that Prime Minister Blair also banned fox hunting, but the county decided to ignore him. It's quite difficult to ignore a fox hunt because there's 12 couple of hounds going woof, 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 and there's all those guys on big horses with red jackets on, and in case you missed them, they blow horns from time to time. So actually, they are quite hard to ignore. But nevertheless, that's what's happened. I'd just say this is not altogether a good development, because what it's done is to make us all into scofflaws. And once you start being a scofflaw for one thing, well, can extend to the next one as well. But the point I'm making is that T.H. White's picture is not at all far removed from actual fact. I know it's not typical, and you certainly won't find it in places like London, where I never go, but it's not altogether vanished either. So, my point so far, the negative fictional images of the late 20th and 21st century have a solid basis in fact. But so do the positive fictional images of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Okay, next question. How did we get from there to here? How does the 1890s situation, the Hobbit situation, turn into the present situation, the Stieg Larsson situation? What went wrong? Well, one answer has been given by a book which I can recommend to you. Yep. You can read that for yourself. Its authors, however, argue that what we've lost is a vision of freedom. And while I don't disagree with them, my point is complementary. I was rather relieved to find out after I deduced this that the same point would be made by de Tocqueville many, many years ago in his book on democracy in America. He noted the strong American attachment to individual liberty, but he also noted the American readiness to form ad hoc associations of all kinds, to make rules for them and then obey those rules. And he concluded, and I quote, "The right of association is almost as inalienable as the right of personal liberty." So, the gentlemen there are talking about the one half of that, the vision of freedom, and I'm talking about the other half of that, which is the right of association. To answer my question about what went wrong, and the question of what we can learn from Hobbits, I think what we've lost is something as important as the vision of freedom, but even more ignored by the political classes of today. Not because they're against it at all, but because we've had it for so long that they take it for granted. And the phrase that I've used for what we've lost or are currently using is social cohesion. Social cohesion. Very obvious and prominent examples showing up right now of the need for social cohesion, which has crumbled, are the forthcoming dissolution of the United Kingdom, which I expect to happen quite soon. It looks more and more likely all the time. And further off, but looming rather larger, the dissolution of the Eurozone and the breakup of the European Union, both of which one can see coming down the pipes, you might say. And I should just say here that I rarely make direct comment on the state of things in the USA, because from an outsider, that might look like direct criticism, which is unwelcome. But I'm sure you'll be able to apply the general sense of what I'm saying, and sometimes at least thinking of that. Well, going back to social cohesion, Hobbits show extremely strong social cohesion, as I will point out later on. But having used the phrase, I'd better consider what it means. Well, the first thing I did is what we all do nowadays, which is to look it up on the internet. And bang, here comes the definition offered by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So there. Well, this strikes me as a perfect example of what I do not mean. As also of the well-known tick-the-box mentality, and also the well-known, hey, look at us being nice mentality. Yes, we have to look after the excluded and the marginalized. We must try to raise those at lower levels of society, okay. But you notice, what it concentrates on is what the society does for you. It hasn't got anything to say about what you do for the society. In fact, this is really a top-down definition of the kind which is readily deployed by the bureaucrats of Westminster or the bureaucrats of Brussels. Now, when I look at definitions like that, I get a nasty feeling that in some ways Karl Marx has won the argument. Not in any intellectual way, but just by penetrating everyday thinking. The model of society, which many of us have interiorized quite unconsciously, is a Marxist one. Down at the bottom are the proletarians. Hooray for them. Up at the top are the wicked capitalists, the predators, as Mr. Miliband calls them, boo to them. In between are the bourgeoisie, which is probably most of us, and we apparently are a bad lot as well. And also in there, but commonly ignored, are the group which Stalin called the kulaks, and which I call the yeomanry. A very difficult and dangerous group. My Uncle Sid was a trooper in the North Yorkshire Yeomanry. Well, this model then is essentially horizontally stratified and economically defined, and it's what marketing people talk about when they talk about A, B, C1, C2 classes and so on. Marx, in fact, succeeded in one thing. He gave us all the idea of, quote, class consciousness, a word never used in English until 1887, and then it was used in the English translation of Marx's Das Kapital. That's where it came from. Many people assume, without thinking about it, that our interests and our allegiances are defined by class. But they aren't. Bewilderment about this fact is a mainspring of the book you may remember. Thomas Frank's 10-year-old What's the Matter with Kansas? How Conservatives Won the Heart of America. The author could not understand why the poorest areas of the USA regularly voted Republican. The voters there must be deluded. They didn't recognize their economic interest. They just were not class conscious. A word not recorded in English till 1903 and then used by an American, actually Jack London. Well, of course, it's possible that Kansans did recognize their economic interests better than the people who presumed to recognize it for them. But maybe it was a case, just a case of, it's not the economy, stupid. Because class consciousness and the horizontal stratification model are not the only ways to go. There may be a kind of vertical stratification in which people of all social classes feel a strong bond, which may, for instance, be regional, and is very likely to be opposed to central direction from whatever class. A good example of this was given me by my friend Professor John Bourne, who is a World War I historian. He'd been reading the correspondence of men of the North Staffordshire Regiment, in which his own grandfather served and died. This regiment recruited in a mining area. The miners were strong trade unionists and they voted Labour to a man. But what John found, and what he told me, was that as he read the letters of these socialist miners, and I will switch to the Staffordshire accent, the thing which cropped up, a guy and a guy, was they wanted their officers to be proper gentlemen. They didn't want no school teachers, they didn't want no bank managers, they wanted proper gentlemen. By that I think they meant men who owned land in the county, who had a stake in the county, and preferably had done so for several or many generations. They wanted to be led by names they knew. And this is the kind of attachment which is completely opposed to Marx's great invention of class consciousness. The miners were class conscious, all right, but it was not their primary loyalty. They thought of other things as well. And there are other loyalties. The kind of regional model I'm talking about is based on all kinds of social networks. They may center on a school. I'm wearing my old school tie at the moment, and it was also Tolkien school. They may center on a sports association. I could have turned up wearing my rugby jersey, but it shrank in the war. And it was also Tolkien. Tolkien played for the same team as me about 50 years before. Or they may center on the church, or on a choir, or on special interest groups of many kinds, or on a larger scale, as I just said, something like the county regiment. Well, the state really doesn't like groups of this kind, and does its best to discourage or marginalize them. The one they really dislike, of course, is any kind of vigilante association. During the London riots a couple of years ago, a senior policeman explained failure to check the rioting by diversion of efforts to check vigilantism, by which he meant shopkeepers getting together and blocking off streets to protect their properties, which you might expect him to be grateful for, but he wasn't. To quote a notorious commentator, it's a pen name, Theodore Dalrymple, Very funny man. That's what he said. Well, I'll let you read that a moment. And I think my reply to that would be, take it easy, Theodore, you know, it's not quite as bad as that. It hasn't smashed up all forms of social solidarity, and I can tell you, without any sticks, the peasants are pretty good at resisting this sort of thing. But I agree with you that that is the trend. And I know that it was the Conservative Party which decided to reorganise the old county system, or Shire system, for more efficient administration. And since then, all governments have steadily disbanded or amalgamated the old county regiments. As anyone could have told them, this worked especially badly in Scotland, where there was very strong attachment to regiments evolved out of the old clan system, like the Gordons or the Cameronians, who were amalgamated in 1994, or the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, who were disbanded in 1970 as a punitive measure. They had been naughty. I won't say any more about that. In general, though, it would seem that the state, perhaps unconsciously, prefers what we might call a system of codependency. They like people whose only significant relationship is with the state. Clients who owe their living to state handouts, or social care, like the unfortunate abused children of Rotherham, and bureaucrats who earn a good living, sometimes a very good living, by organising such care and such handouts. Well, there are some particular issues here I don't have time to get into, but perhaps I should put up my alternative model of social cohesion, which is this. Well, that's my definition, but Robert Conquest, I don't know if you know the name of Robert Conquest, he was the great critic of Stalinism, and little credit did he get for it for many years. But he calls this the feel of citizenship. It's what made the West German taxpayers pay a very severe price for integration with the East Germans. It's also the absence of it which makes all German taxpayers now very reluctant to fund what they see as Greek non-taxpayers. If you haven't got the feel of citizenship, these schemes will not work. More generally, it's that sense of social cohesion which makes people pay their taxes honestly, obey laws willingly, agree to support by their taxes and by private charity their fellows who are sick, old, disabled, or out of luck. And this is an important one right now, not try to game the system. And this is not an important one right now, but who knows, volunteer by the million for war service. Social cohesion is what does all those things. What are the threats to social cohesion? Well, I'm sure there are more than I have listed, but these are the ones that I came up with. And I could go through all of them, exemplifying what I mean, but I've only got time for the top one and the bottom one. With the bottom one, well, people whose primary aim is to become jihadis do not do a lot for social cohesion. Nor, I would say, does the phenomenon of long-term English learners, a phenomenon which is completely different from experience in the 19th century. So, there are many of these threats, but going back to the top one, after I looked up social cohesion, I looked up what the military call unit cohesion. And here I got much better results. What the military have noticed is that if you want unit cohesion, which is the best predictor for military efficiency, you must avoid treating soldiers like light bulbs. Hey, that one's burned out, screw in another one. You've got to tell recruits or replacements what units they're in. You have to foster a sense of identity. You see that the unit accepts them and identifies them at every stage, including transit. It's not administratively efficient, but a system which works for ration packs and ammunition resupply does not work for people. The soldiers know that. I fear that too many of our politicians do not. This is what we've started to lose. This is what we need to re-establish. Well, I better go back to Hobbits. At the end of Tolkien's story, the Shire is taken over by a bunch of armed thugs, led by the dethroned wizard Saruman, also known as Sharky. Since hobbits average less than 4 feet tall and have no standing army and only 12 sheriffs in the whole county, they can't actually make much resistance. Furthermore, at least initially, the thugs proclaim an ideology, which is a curiously anachronistic one, of modernity and egalitarianism. One of the thugs says to Frodo Baggins, "This country wants waking up and setting to rights, and Sharky's going to do it." Waking up, setting to rights. In practice, this seems to mean introduction of heavy industry for prestige purposes, accompanied by uncontrolled pollution in a kind of familiar Stalinist way. Meanwhile, in Tolkien Shire, the local police force of sheriffs has been expanded from 12 to hundreds, and the idea of taxation has reared its ugly head with, again, an anachronistic rationale. One of the old sheriffs explains, and at this point you might remember what was on the slide of Theodore Dowling when he said that solidarity had come to mean redistribution, it mean high taxation for redistribution by state officials. So that's what Tolkien gives us in his fictional way. Rather surprisingly, these new rulers also seem to have begun with some idea of social housing, because the returning travellers, they can see that the new houses have been built. Later on, Sam Gamgee is told that his father is in one of them, and that's the explanation down there at the bottom. One of them new houses that the chiefsmen used to build while they still did any work. Well, I'm sure that in all this, this came out in 1955, this is Tolkien's comment on the British situation post-World War II, in the time of the government which displaced Churchill, the Labour government, and which is remembered for rationing, I can remember rationing, coal shortage, the frozen winter of 1947, and of course the social housing. Narrow, ugly, gloomy, mean, damp, ill-designed, and badly built, as we used to call them, the council houses and the prefabs. Well, in Tolkien's fiction, what saves the day is the old institutions, the Thane, the established clans of the Folklands, the Hobbitry in arms, and even Aunt Lobelia. Sharky and his thugs have installed a puppet government with echoes of Vichy France, and of course even in the Shire there are hobbits prepared to collaborate. But the governor's mother, Aunt Lobelia, though generally disliked herself, resents the building programme when it impinges on Bag End, a hall of B. Baggins, Esquire, which she now regards as her own property. And when the thugs say it's Sharky's orders, she ups with her umbrella and goes for the leader, and gets dragged off to the lockholes. Well, they took others we miss more, but there's no denying she showed more spirit than most. But meanwhile, the Thane, as it were, the Lord Lieutenant in Shire terms, encouraged by the return of travellers, he raises the county and the militia, just as Thanes and Lord Lieutenants are supposed to do, and that is enough to deal with the problem. Well, some will say, all very unrealistic. This is the politics of Fantasyland. But I can't help thinking of my list of threats to social cohesion, one of which was managerialism, the feeling of being managed from afar. Well, the town of Hartlepool, where my Uncle Jack lived, was one of those parliamentary seats which was solid Labour. They said if you put a red rosette on a donkey, it would be elected MP, possibly with some advantage for all I know. As a result, the Parliamentary Labour Party in Westminster had a habit of assuming that they could parachute party grandees in from London, sure to be elected, and indeed they did just that, with Peter, now Lord Mandelson. Now in Hartlepool, one of the local habits is eating mushy peas with their fish and chips. I don't know if any of you have ever eaten mushy peas, but my advice is don't. In the old days when they hadn't got freezers, we dried peas, and the only way you could make them edible, I used to blow mine through a pea shooter actually, but if you want to actually eat them, then you just boil them into a horrible paste, which tastes horrible. Anyway, it said that Peter Mandelson, eager to show he was a man of the people, actually he's the grandson of a cabinet minister, went into a fish and chip shop in Hartlepool, ordered the fish and chips, and then pointing to the pan of bubbling mushy peas, said, "And I'll have some of your lovely guacamole." A word which up to that point had never before been heard in the county of Ballroom. Well, I can't help thinking that if the Conservative Party had ever given a matter of thought, they could have found a local candidate who would have made a big thing about guacamole. I can imagine what my Uncle Jack would have said. He would have said, how can you vote for someone who doesn't know the difference between mushy peas and guacamole? I ask you, what's a man like that going to do for the tune? The tune is the town. And I think it would have been an interesting contest, actually, because it would have imposed, it would have confronted the kind of Marxist model of class consciousness with a vertical model of regional solidarity. Well, as I say, it would have been a good contest. I don't know quite who would have won. But it didn't matter because this never entered the minds of those stuck in the Westminster model, so similar to the Beltway model. They accepted the Marxist model, horizontal stratification, people vote according to their class without thought. They ignored the vertical model of regional sympathy and solidarity, and the results of that are becoming ever clearer as the UK edges closer to following the former Yugoslavia, to which it has many similarities, into social disintegration. To sum up, I'm saying that we neglect social cohesion and civil society at our peril. I think this thought has been routinely neglected by those who take cohesion for granted and take the feel of citizenship for granted, as it has been granted for at least a couple of centuries. But not anymore. The danger signs are evident. One of them is decreasing voter participation. This is often diagnosed by commentators as voter apathy. It's not apathy. There is still great interest in politics, as is shown by the rise of protest parties all over the place, from Syriza in Greece to Podemos in Spain and many other examples too. The apathy only extends to business as usual politics, that terrible feeling that you are being managed from afar. Another and further danger sign is state disintegration. The 19th century was a time of state coalescence, obvious examples being Deutschland, made out of a set of princely states, and Italy, the same thing. But the 20th century, at the late 20th century, has been a time of disintegration, a process which is still continuing. Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, let us not forget Ukraine, going on right now, Scotland, Catalonia, the Lombard League, all that kind of thing. This is not yet happening in the USA. It is not yet happening in the USA. But I would say that a good time to think about an issue is before it starts to get happening, before it turns from an issue into a crisis. Because one of the striking things about what I'm talking about is no one saw it coming. I was in Yugoslavia just before the bottom fell out of the pan, and I can remember exactly what it was like. And I'd still say that the situation there in 1988 is one which I can recognize now in 2015. And the cure for it? Well, social cohesion and the field for citizenship are not produced top-down, as the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development seems to think. It grows ground up, and the core of it is the private institutions of civil society, the thanes and the moots and the musters, or in real life, the local associations, the sports clubs, the fan groups, the library leagues, whatever they are. They are apparently unnecessary, they are administratively inconvenient, and they are allegedly inefficient. Nevertheless, that's the vital part. All the social institutions which are not dependent on the state and which are open to all citizens if they care to join. The more of these we have, the merrier, and the more inclusive they are, the better. Taking these institutions away, or legislating against them, or putting obstacles in their path, is like taking away unit cohesion in the military. Neither social cohesion nor unit cohesion can be replaced by the organs of the state or by orders from higher command. They do not exist under the umbrella of the state. They are the invisible skeleton that supports the state. And as one of my historian colleagues remarked to me, facing a similar kind of state takeover to the ones I discussed before, he said, if you take the skeleton out of a human body, don't be surprised if what you're left with is a puddle of flesh on the floor. Well, I hope it won't come to that. Thanks for listening.